Planner McKay, can you please conduct a mic and video check?
Howdy, can you hear and see me?
I read you loud and clear. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Zoning Administrator Murray, can you please conduct a mic and video check?
Yes. Can you see me now? Can you hear me now?
Perfect. I hear you loud and clear.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Hello, everybody. Kyle, are you there?
I can hear you loud and clear.
Well, I just realized we're actually a couple minutes past 5 o'clock, and I was just doing a last minute review of something. And so I'd like to go ahead and start the meeting. Are you good to go?
We are good to go.
Fantastic. Then hello, everyone. I apologize for the delay in the start. My name is Susie Murray, and I want to welcome you to a special zoning administrator meeting on January 25th. So before I call the meeting to order, I want to read something, some access information that people may want to grab a pencil for and write this down in case you have any problems speaking on Zoom. You can call in. So I'll start reading and give you a couple seconds here to grab your pencils. So pursuant to Government Code Section 54953 subsection E and the recommendation of the Health Officer of Sonoma County, the zoning administrator will be participating in this meeting via Zoom webinar. Members of the public can participate virtually at www.zoom.us/join or by calling toll free, and this is the first number you want to write down, 877-853-5257, and you'll need the meeting ID number, which is 828-7462-7915. Public accessing the meeting through Zoom can provide comments during the public comment periods. Additional information related to the meeting participation is available at www.srcity.org/zoningadmin. This meeting will also be live streamed at youtube.com/City of Santa Rosa. So with that, I'm going to call the meeting to order at 5:09. The second item on the agenda is a public comment period. And this is a time when any member of the public wishing to make a comment about non-agenda items, so not about the housing development on the agenda, you can bring up, you have your 3 minutes to make public comments. Just go ahead and raise your hand, and Kyle, I'll let you give the instructions on that.
If you wish to make a public comment via Zoom, please raise your hand. The raise your hand icon is located at the bottom of the Zoom screen. If you are dialing in via telephone, please dial *9 to raise your hand and *6 to unmute once called upon.
Do we have any raised hands?
We have no raised hands at this time, Zoning Administrator Murray.
Thank you. So my name is Susie Murray, and I'm the zoning administrator this afternoon. You can call me Zoning Administrator Murray. I prefer Susie, but either works for me. I want to read you the statement of purpose for the zoning administrator. The zoning administrator is appointed by the Planning and Economic Development Directory and has the responsibility and authority to conduct public meetings and hearings and to take action on minor and reduced review authority discretionary applications. A decision by the zoning administrator may be appealed to the Design Review Board, Cultural Heritage Board, Planning Commission, or City Council as applicable to the decision within 10 calendar days of the action. Gosh, and I don't know what that date is. Hold on. 10 calendar days. We have one. It would fall on to February 4th. And because February 4th is a weekend, the appeal period would end on Monday, February 6th. So appeal applications for decisions made this evening may be appealed, and the application must be received no later than Monday, February 6th. So moving on the agenda to zoning administrator reports. I don't have anything to add, and we have no consent items this evening, which, oh, you know what? I didn't open the public comment period. So I'm going to go ahead and open up. I told you about the public comment period, but I didn't open it up. And yes, I did. And Kyle, you told me there was nobody there. Oh, I'll get it together here right about now. So let me get my agenda up here. Okay, so the first item is, bear with me, folks, I'm having an issue here. Here we go. The scheduled item 3.0, public hearing is for 1650 West Steel Lane Apartments. EIR previously certified by council. This is a planning project. The file number is PRJ 21-010. And the planner is Connor McKay. And I will turn it over to Connor to make a presentation.
Good afternoon, Zoning Administrator Murray. I will now share my screen. All right, can you see my screen and hear me? Great. So yeah, thanks for the introduction. My name is Connor McKay, Senior Planner. I'm happy to be here this afternoon to present the West Steel Lane Apartments project proposed to be located at 1650 West Steel Lane. This project includes a request for minor design review approval for the construction of a 36-unit, 3-story apartment complex. Additionally, the project includes a request for minor conditional use permit approval for a supplemental density bonus. And just to describe the affordability components that are proposed in the project. So the project proposes 3 one-bedroom units available to very low-income households and 1 3-bedroom unit available to very low-income households. The project proposes 15 market rate units that are allowed by the base density, 9 market rate units that would be allowed pursuant to state density bonus, and 8 market rate units allowed pursuant to this requested supplemental density bonus. The director has approved a state density bonus application for the project, allowing the project to increase the unit count by 35% beyond the base density. The request for supplemental density bonus for the minor conditional use permit would allow the project to increase the number of units by an additional 65%, achieving a total of 100% increase beyond the base density, which is 36 units total. So part of the state density bonus approval included 3.
Connor, can I interrupt for a sec? We're getting some feedback with, I've been able to understand everything, but it's difficult.
Maybe I can turn on my fan. Is that in any way better?
That sounds better already, yes.
Okay, great. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
So the project has been approved for 3 concessions, which are modifications to standard zoning code requirements. These concessions include building setbacks, so a reduction of 5 feet for the side yard on the east property line. That would allow a proposed automated parking structure to be located 5 feet from the property line, where typically it would be required to be located 10 feet from the property. That property line is shared with an existing neighborhood shopping center. The second concession that has been approved as part of the state density bonus approval is an increase of maximum building height from 35 feet to 45 feet. The applicant requested this concession to achieve the proposed density and achieve economic feasibility for the development of the project. Finally, the project has been approved for a parking concession that would reduce the number of required parking spaces from 52 spaces to 36 spaces. Like I mentioned, part of the parking space total would be located within an automated parking structure. So the applicant has contracted with W-Trans to prepare a traffic study, which includes a parking analysis. The proposed project includes a variety of measures to reduce anticipated parking demand, and we have a W-Trans staff member available to answer any questions about parking demand and the analysis associated with that. And additionally, the State Assembly of California has adopted Assembly Bill 2097 that prevents local jurisdictions from imposing or enforcing on-site parking requirements. The bill also prevents a review authority's ability, it prevents local jurisdictions from imposing or enforcing on-site parking requirements for projects located within 1/2 mile of a light rail station. In this case, the project is within 1/2 mile of the North Santa Rosa Smart Station. So Assembly Bill 2097 also prevents a review authority's ability to deny a project based on lack of on-site parking, unless specific findings can be made in writing within 30 days of receipt of a completed application. That not requiring parking would have a substantially negative impact on the city's ability to meet its share of housing needs or existing residential or commercial parking within 1/2 mile of the site. And the city did not make such findings in writing within 30 days of the receipt of the complete application. So a bit of project history. This project came in at the beginning of 2020 or even at the end of 2019. We held the neighborhood meeting on January 15th, 2020. We had approximately 10 attendees, and they expressed pretty much the consensus was that there was concern about the increase of residential density in the area and that the lack of parking availability for the project would also result in issues. On March 5th, 2020, the project received concept design review by the Design Review Board. The DRB, or the Design Review Board, provided comments about the design concept that are bulleted in the resolution that is included in the item packet. Additionally, the applicant has prepared a summary of their consideration and incorporation of those comments that were provided at concept design review, and that attachment is listed as attachment 7 in the item packet. Finally, Design Review Board Chair Drew Weigel is present to discuss those comments in the applicant's consideration as they relate to the design that is presented this evening. On January 19th of 2023, we held a zoning administrator meeting that originally had this item on the agenda, but was continued to today to hold the public hearing at 5 p.m. Here we have an aerial of the site. As you can see, the project site is currently undeveloped. Here we have neighborhood context. So as you look around, I've identified major landmarks in the area. You'll note that immediately to the east, I mentioned that shopping center. And then within a short walk is Cottingtown Mall, which has a grocery store and a variety of everyday residential needs. Additionally, across the street is Snoopy's Home Ice, and down the street is the Charles Schultz Museum, in addition to the Children's Museum. And there's also a church at the corner northeast of the project site. The zoning of the proposed project site is R315 Station Area Combining District. That means that multifamily was envisioned as a land use at this location and is such allowed by right. So the project is also located within the North Station Priority Development Area, which reduces any projects that would constitute major design review to minor design review, hence the special meeting at the ZA this evening at the zoning administrator. Let's see. And similarly, the project site is designated for medium density residential, which would allow 18 units per acre. As I mentioned, the project has received a state density bonus and is requesting a supplemental density bonus to increase that density to result in a total unit count of 36 units. Here we have a site plan of the proposed residential development. As you can see, the project includes residential structures that are surrounding a courtyard, and there's a plaza to the northwest of the project site. And I will kind of flip through some elevations now. I'm going to defer a lot of the architectural discussion to the project's architect. But generally, as I summarized in the resolution for the project, the applicant took careful care to incorporate design guidelines that are applicable citywide, and design guidelines that are specific to the North Santa Rosa Station area specific plan. Here we have a rendering from Steel Lane and Hardy's Lane, looking down Meadowbrook. As you can see, that plaza is kind of at the entry of the project. Here we have the internal courtyard. So as it relates to environmental review, the project has been reviewed to be in compliance with the California Environmental Quality Act, or CEQA. So as part of the adoption of the North Santa Rosa Station Area Specific Plan, an environmental impact report was prepared. And to analyze the impacts of this project, an addendum to the EIR, was prepared pursuant to CEQA Guidelines Section 15164, which concludes that the proposed project would not cause new or substantial increases in severity of significant environmental effects. This addendum to the EIR was supported by a variety of technical studies that have been included as attachments to the addendum, which is included in the item packet as well. We've seen a variety of public comments throughout this process. I mentioned some at the neighborhood meeting phase. And I also at this point would like to mention that staff elected to double the radius that postcards were sent out, which would typically be required by the zoning code. So typically we would send out notices to property owners and residents within 600 feet. But given the public comment we received, and just for sake of general transparency, staff elected to increase that to 1,200 feet within the project site. So this is the summary of the project, of the public comments we received about the project. The most common public comment we received is concerns about insufficient parking on site. And I will go into that a bit. I mean, I kind of discussed that as part of the concession. And like I said, a staff member from W-Trans is available to answer questions and respond to comments about that. Let's see. And all of these public comments have been included as attachment 10 of the item packet. And I also want to mention that staff received an email shortly after noon today, which is the deadline to provide late correspondence to add to the agenda. And that comment reflected echoing previous concerns about insufficient parking being available on site. So here are the required findings for a minor conditional use permit. Staff can make the required findings for recommending approval. The project would provide 36 high-quality residential units served by a neighborhood shopping center directly to the east of the project, and Coddingtown Mall a short walk away to the southeast. The project is also within 1/2 mile of the SMART station, which provides transportation to the Santa Rosa Airport, downtown Santa Rosa, and the broader North Bay area. Additionally, sorry, I've got, my notes are a little tornado-y. So as it relates to the extra required findings related to supplemental density bonus, the project proposes to dedicate 11% of its units for very low income households and earning, which for very low income households which earn less than 50% of Sonoma County's area median income, which grants 60% of the eligibility points. Additionally, the project proposes that one of the 4 units dedicated to very low income households be a 3-bedroom unit, which meets the criteria of a family sized rental unit, which is established by table 3.4 of zoning code section 2031-070. So they do meet the number of required eligibility points that is established by the zoning code for those 2 reasons. Here are the required findings for minor design review. Staff can make the required findings to recommend approval of the minor design review. As summarized in the resolution, the project design incorporates, like I mentioned, many North Santa Rosa Station area specific planning design guidelines. I also mentioned that a traffic study was prepared, and this traffic study concluded that we should anticipate the generation of 17 a.m. and 20 p.m. trips. So those are those peak hours and the number of trips that are anticipated to be generated by the project in those peak hours. The project is also consistent with City Council's goals to provide housing for all and to facilitate transit-oriented development. It is recommended by the Planning and Economic Development Department that the zoning administrator approve minor design review and a minor conditional use permit to allow the construction of a 36-unit apartment complex located at 1650 West Steel Lane. And I'm available for any questions at this point. I know the project architect is interested in making a presentation as well. Do you have any questions for staff, or do you want to move forward to the applicant presentation?
I actually have 2 questions for staff. Backing up to slide 3, I noticed something that didn't make sense to me. Is it 18 market rate units are allowed with the base density? Or 15? If we're getting, I think it's the base density is higher because that doesn't add up.
I just checked this.
It's because it's an acre and it's medium density residential. And I think medium density residential allows 8 to 18 units per acre.
That's correct.
Okay.
I had some.
I know, and it's less than an acre.
Right. I think
5
the
acres.
issue is that I counted backwards from the total number of units and attributed units to each respective density bonus. And then whatever was left over, I attributed to the base density, if that makes sense.
Okay. For whatever it's, I just wanted to clarify on the slide because I've done the math and it works. I'm comfortable with that, but I wanted others to hear it. And then that was the one that I have right now. I'm going to ask after I hear from the applicant, if they don't cover it, what traffic improvements are the project is conditioned with, but I'll hear the next presentation first.
Great, and I will share that slide presentation now.
Thank you.
Okay, great.
Shall I introduce myself, Susie?
Yes,
Hello.
please.
My name is Ingrid Anderson, and we are the project architects of this project. I'd like to also introduce the owner of the project, the developer, Patrick O'Neill of McBride Lane Apartments LLC, to make a brief statement first, if he's available.
Can you hear me? This is Patrick O'Neill.
Yes. We can.
Yes, we can.
Oh, good evening, zoning administrator and Connor. I looked at this project 4 years ago, and I started working with Hedgepath Architects. And I liked the project because I have other apartment buildings in the area on McBride Lane Apartments. And I liked what everybody did with Coddington Mall, and then the smart train that comes all the way down to Marin. And I liked particularly this plot of land across in the Snoopy ice rink and all of the areas and everything that Santa Rosa has been able to do to the city, because Santa Rosa used to be very far away from San Francisco, but now it hasn't. So it's like one of them diamonds that you keep polishing and it gets better and better and better. And then the fact that this project come along and the view from the city and the city planners that we met through the process of this was very delighted that something will be done with this parcel, and also to provide more housing to Santa Rosa. And at someday we're having the smart train close by, and we would encourage people to take care of the environment and use bicycles and trains, and the walking distance of Coddington Mall and everything else lend itself to this project to start a kind of a new beginning of, like, yes, cars and parking and all is a big issue for this project, but at some point we need to start thinking, okay, we need to encourage people not to be in the cars and getting outdoors and all that stuff. So I do a lot of projects in San Francisco, like I do high-end historic homes in San Francisco, all the Queen Anne's, the Victorians and all that stuff. So me and Ingrid and Warren at the time had spent a lot of time trying to bring something nice to this project, so you could look back on 50, 60 years, just like you do with the old buildings in the city and in Europe, and go, somebody got this thing right. They put a little heart and care into it, and they are welcoming people to come and live in this beautiful building. And Santa Rosa can look at this building and go, with the state density and the desired need for housing, to look at the application and go, yeah, this is a well-constructed, well-designed project, and it meets all the criteria. And at some point, we do have to move to the idea that people won't use cars anymore. Like you see it all over Europe right now. And this project for sure definitely lends itself. And I'm excited to get it built and give you guys, 36 units and with the low income and stuff. And, I'm going to be around for the next 60 years, maybe. So the idea is to build something that facilitates everybody's needs, but more importantly, it looks towards the future of housing in Santa Rosa. Did we get that? Hello?
We
Yes,
got it.
we
Thank
got
you
it.
very
Oh.
much.
Oh,
Thank
sorry.
you, Patrick. Thank you.
Yeah.
I also would like Callum or one of the other staff members at Generation Housing to have the opportunity to speak on behalf of the project. They also have an endorsement that they want to make.
Can we do that after with public comment? Ingrid, I'd really like to see the presentation.
Oh, sure. Okay, no
After?
problem. Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay. Well, as Connor said, this is a 36 unit project. And the goal here was to build a project that was aligned with the policy to build housing in communities where, in neighborhoods where transit and high quality transit is nearby. Santa Rosa doesn't have a lot of 15-minute bus stops or high-speed rail, for instance, but in Coddington Mall, this parcel is half a mile away from two major bus lines that run from the Coddington Transit Hub to the downtown Transit Hub. And it is less than half a mile away from the smart train station that can take commuters up to the North County or down to Marin and onwards by other means. Also, the project is meant to provide equitable housing with a mix of income levels. The low-income units are designated as very low income, so 50% or less of AMI. And as Connor mentioned, one of them is a large family unit, which isn't always common in the mix of units offered for affordable housing in market rate projects like this. Our goal here is to provide housing for people of all ages and abilities and income levels and backgrounds to enrich the diversity of communities that live in this area and also provide very high quality housing for those people. The parking concern has been addressed by a study by WTrans, which concluded that with the empirical data available, that the project would be parked adequately with 35 parking spaces. And so therefore the designers, myself included, created a design in which each unit would have one parking space available to it. And this would be supplemented by the availability of secure bike parking for every unit, short-term bike parking in racks, and also the pedestrian-oriented location of the project. We took care to create a pedestrian-friendly activated street frontage on Meadowbrook and Steel Lane to make the experience of living here and walking to and from the various institutions and retail and business places a rich experience and a good urban experience for its residents and for the people who live here. We can go through the slides now, Connor, if you want. This is, by the way, this we can, if you want to, could you back up? I should have introduced. The picture in the center is the entry plaza. It's a raised plaza to give you a sense of privacy and being removed from the busyness of the street at West D Lane, but still open to the street. It's a place where people can wait for guests or watch for people who are coming by to meet them. And inside, from on the right side of the screen, you see the interior courtyard that the outside plaza leads to. And that's a more secure, quieter space that is a realm just for the residents of the project. You can sort of see on the picture to the right that there are little alleyways that provide a gradient of privacy as residents make their way into their apartments, which are in 3 separate buildings. Next slide, please. And this is just a diagram of the half mile and 1 mile markers for locations of attractions and amenities and retail, business, and other available places to visit and use for the residents. Next slide. And these are photos of the surrounding neighborhood. The ice rink is directly across, and we wanted to keep the architecture of the project in keeping with some of the traditional, more traditional residential architecture that exists in the neighborhood. Therefore, although the top of structural plate at the 3-story buildings is 30 feet, the ridge line is a ridge line of 5 and 12 and 6 and 12. And so that would take the top of the highest peaks up to 45 feet. Next slide. And this is a site plan showing some zoning information. Next slide. This is the ground floor plan. And there are quite a few unit types. There are 2-bedroom, 1-bedroom, and 3-bedroom units, but there's a wide variety of unit types to accommodate the different needs of different families. There's also residential storage and a leasing office at the ground floor, and a laundry room and lobby space. Next slide. An apartment straddles the archway that connects the ground floor plaza to the courtyard inside, so that there are 2 floors of residential apartments above that, and those are probably the largest units. But we took care to create units that could accommodate furniture in a usable way. These are walk-up apartments, though. They are not elevator apartments. Just the ground floor units are accessible. And next slide. And this is level 3. And finally, could you show the next slide, please, Connor? And the roof plan. We will be concealing the mechanical equipment in wells at the top floor, at the roof, by cutting into the roof ridges in the centers of the buildings, so that we could that's probably where we'll put the condensing units for the heating and cooling systems. Next slide. And these are the unit types. And the next slide. Again, these are larger ones. The unit type C is the 3-bedroom, unit type D is the largest 2-bedroom unit. And the next slide. The second and third floor units don't all have private balconies. The ground floor units do have private terraces and balconies. The second and third floor residents can use the common courtyard and the community room next to the laundry. Next slide. And these are the elevations. We incorporated all of the comments of the design review board the best that we could. And one of the comments was to make the walls, consider coloring the walls. They were originally a pale gray. And so we warmed up the tone of the stucco to a color called Fallbrook, an earth tone color, and matched to that is a gloss, a glazed subway tile shape in 3 different colors, which we'll see on the color board. There's a lot of attention to variation and creating a level, multiple levels of primary to less primary roof lines and massing, and also to creating repeating, but a large variety of repeating fenestration patterns. The windows are connected into verticals by the bands of tile that are set into the stucco. And an additional articulation is in the wooden balcony posts and the wood framing that's exposed at the balconies to carry the overhanging eaves that cover the balconies. Next slide, please. And there are 4 buildings total, 3 of them are residential. And so there are a large variety of elevations, and they're all different because every building is unique to, and it fits in to the site like a puzzle piece. The on the bottom left is the elevation of the parking garage, which will most likely be concrete masonry block that's faced with stucco. And at the second level of the automated parking structure, we've screened the cars with a metal screen that has a cutout pattern in it. And the next slide, please. And these are examples of the colors we use, the sketch of the layout for the tile. And the colors are earth tones, greens, tans, and dark gray. And the next slide, please. And this is these are sections cut through the units And you can see where 45 feet is just above the highest ridges. And the next slide, please. And this is a view of the entry plaza at the front, at the corner of Meadowbrook and Westy Lane. There's an arbor, a steel arbor that carries planting that covers the ramp, the circular ramp that takes you up to the plaza from the street level. And the perspective from the courtyard at the bottom right has a similar arbor, a full circle, to provide a little seating enclosure. And this is sort of like an outdoor living room that everyone in the complex can share. There are 2 private garages in buildings B and C that provide parking for 6 cars. 2 of those spaces are going to be accessible. And that's the garage elevation is shown on elevation number 5. All the parking will be unbundled. So there's a variety of parking types. There's surface parking on the lot, 6 spaces of surface parking, 6 spaces of the garage parking. And then the remainder of the parking is going to be in the structure. Next slide, please. And again, this is a view of the plaza. Next slide. And the view of the interior courtyard. The units at the 2nd and 3rd floors are all accessible by covered exterior stairways, such as the one you see on the left side of the screen there. Next slide. And this is the view from Westy Lane. There are patios outside the ground floor apartments, and the walls are about 4'6" high from the ground at Steel Lane, but only 3 feet high from the terrace level itself. And the next slide, please. And this is the view into the driveway with the elevation of the parking structure in the background and the trash enclosure just to the right of the screen. Next slide. And I think that's our presentation. The rest of the drawings are for reference in case there are questions about the drainage utilities and grading plans. And we also have a landscape package at the end of the project. I think that's all the comments I have right now, and I'd like to step back.
Okay. I know that we have Chair Weigel from the Design Review Board here. I'd like to open the public hearing and hear comments before I ask him to step in and give us some feedback. So let's go ahead and open that public hearing.
If you wish to make a public comment via Zoom, please raise your hand. The raise your hand icon is located at the bottom of the Zoom screen. If you are dialing in via telephone, please dial *9 to raise your hand and *6 to unmute once called upon. Zoning Administrator Murray, it looks like we have a hand raised. Gina, you are first. Gina, you are unmuted. Please begin by stating your name for the public record.
Gina, I can't hear you.
Gina Huntsinger, you are unmuted. Please begin by stating your name for the public record. Okay, Gina, we'll circle back to you in case you still have a comment. Colette? Sorry, Zoning Administrator?
I was going to suggest that perhaps we call out or explain to Gina, if you call in, Gina, and turn your volume off on your computer, If you call in and the 877 number, the toll-free number, and enter the meeting access code, you'll be able to raise your hand on there, and we'll be able to let you, or give you an opportunity to speak there. I don't know what the problem is, but that's another option. Okay, take it away, Kyle. Sorry about that.
Of course. Colette, you are now unmuted. Please begin by stating your name for the record.
Hi, my name is Colette Michaud, and I am the CEO of the Children's Museum of Sonoma County, located at 1835 Westdale Lane. I want to talk tonight about the benefits of the city receives from what I think is an incredible creative corridor of arts and cultural resources on Westdale Lane. I'm not sure the city leaders really understand what a treasure trove of destinations they have right underneath their nose. Putting in such a high density apartment complex is definitely going to negatively impact this area. Between the Schultz Museum, the Ice Arena, and the Children's Museum, we see more than 350,000 visitors annually. Most cities would die to have even just one of these cultural gems and would do all they could or can to ensure their success and continued growth. According to data collected in 2005 from 40,000 attendees at a range of arts events and organizations, it was revealed an average spending with adjusted for inflation of $34 per person at these organizations, not including prices of admission. This spending generates for Sonoma County, if you apply it to Sonoma County, an estimated $12 million in valuable revenue annually for local merchants and their communities. Non-local attendees spend almost twice as much as local attendees, demonstrating that a community that attracts cultural tourists stands to harness significant economic rewards. Given the economic and cultural impact that these three organizations have on our community, does it really make sense to throw an apartment complex into the mix, which will not provide much in the way of economic support to the city and will instead have a very negative impact on traffic, parking, and add an additional congestion to an already very congested area? I believe this complex will cause severe and negative impacts to all of the nonprofit cultural destinations located nearby and does not provide tangible benefits economically or culturally to the city. I really encourage you to think seriously about this, and I hope that the city will appreciate and understand the cultural organizations that they have on this corridor and do all they can to support them and their growth going now and going into the future. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Gina, we're going to go ahead and circle back to you. Gina, your mic is unmuted. Please begin by stating your name for the record.
She may have called in as well.
Gina, if you happen to call in, please dial *9 to raise your hand or *6 to unmute once called upon. So possibly try *6. Or if you're on your Zoom, to unmute is the lower left corner of the Zoom screen.
You've got
Can you hear me? Yes, I think you can hear me now.
Yes,
Is that true?
Yes,
that
we
is
can hear you.
true.
No. Uh-oh.
Is this
Hello?
Gina? Gina?
Oh, wait. Sorry, I had muted you because can you hear me now? Sorry.
Yes, we can. If that's Gina that's talking, we can hear you.
My name, I'll start again. My name is Gina Hunsinger, and I'm the museum director of the Charles M. Schultz Museum and Research Center. And I would just like to echo that for 50 years, we've had an incredible resource for the community here. It remains incredibly important to keep a situation where people who come here from their first view of Santa Rosa is many times these three institutions that are here. And the fact that there's such inadequate parking for this project is unfortunate, because housing is important, but the parking situation will cause major problems for this area. And I'm just asking that you really consider that. I know that you said, according to city code, the review authority may approve a decrease in parking spaces after making the following finding. But it said, it says that a number of parking spaces approved will be sufficient for its safe, convenient, and efficient operation of use, and will be compatible with the neighboring properties. And it's not compatible with the neighboring properties, and unless the parking amount of parking is increased. And I just want to thank you for your time, and that is all I have to say.
Thank you. Looks like we have a caller there.
Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Oh, good. My name is Kathleen O'Brien, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak tonight. I am 110+% behind both of the people from the Charles Schultz operations. Now, I'm glad that that lot is no longer such an eyesore, but it is truly not going to be an appropriate spot with these wonderful historical and tourist-driven businesses. And I really believe that the traffic, whoever does this, must have had their hat on wrong that day, because all of the comments that I've read through that have come through to the board, except one, have stated a major concern about the traffic. Now, God bless the man that wants to build this and have 11% or that many units in low-income housing. I am 100% behind that. And I'm not trying to pull a knot in my backyard. It's just nonsensical. Anyone with 1 ounce of logic would be here during the high times, whether it's a show at the museum or the ice rink. The side street, Hardee's, is bumper to bumper, as well as the additional parking lot for the tourist opportunities is packed full. And so before you rush forward, I just ask that you really reevaluate this and have some people come out. And I'm the one that asked about a petition because I may not have a lot of money, but I sure have 2 feet that are happy to go door to door and really have these voices be heard. Because once it's up, it's done. And I think that as a taxpayer here in Sonoma County, we really need to have this reviewed again. Thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you for taking the time to join us.
It looks like our next comment is from Joshua. Joshua, give me 1 second to unmute you. Joshua, you're now unmuted. Please state your name for the record.
Okay, my name is Joshua Shipper. I am the Director of Special Initiatives for Generation Housing. I'm filling in for Cal Weeks, who unfortunately couldn't join you. We just wanted to make a very brief statement that acknowledges the multiple ways that this project aligns with several of the stated goals of Santa Rosa's City Council. And in that way, we believe it fulfills a number of priorities. These include housing that is located near key job centers, especially the Coddington Mall area, transit-oriented development, much of which you've heard about, access to healthy amenities. And we also think that it is a form of infill development that really drives this city-centric growth that the city has prioritized. The proposed project is surrounded by a mix of housing typologies from multifamily units that are immediately south of the project to a senior housing development located to the west. Its location near both the SMART train and potentially proposed overpass over the 101 that will be accessible by bike, we think will contribute to the overall reduction in vehicle miles traveled, and ideally begin to shift our community towards higher usage of locally available public transit, rideshare, and other modes of transportation. And so we really do give this an endorsement, not only from Generation Housing as an organization, but on behalf of the principles stated and the priorities of Santa Rosa City Council. So thank you very much for letting me share those comments.
Thank you.
Zoning Administrator Murray, it appears there's no more hands raised at this time. We may close for comments.
Okay, then I'll go ahead and close the public hearing. Bring it back. I have some questions, but I think I'd like to hear from Chair Weigel. We can elevate him.
Hey, Susie, can you hear me?
I sure can. Thank you so much for coming and chiming in tonight.
Oh, no problem. Not at all. So I remember seeing this project almost 3 years ago now. And I think I've got a couple of questions that I think might help with some land use kind of things. And then I have some comments. So do you think we can maybe do a couple of questions first? So I just for not only my own remembrance, but also perhaps to help inform the public about a couple of things.
Absolutely. I think Connor can, I'm sure, respond to most of them. I have recently listened to that meeting, so if it's something about the meeting, I may be able to help.
Sure, thanks. So, my first question is, we heard a lot of public comment about parking, and parking is always an issue, a piece of concern for any type of development, frankly, because how do you get there? How do you occupy it? Whatever the type of development is. But a density bonus is a really unique thing in the state of California from an entitlement perspective, and so when you go after a density bonus, you get concessions, right? And the concessions can be wide ranging from a lot of different things, but typically in Santa Rosa, what we tend to see is parking reduction, increase in unit density, and sometimes, but not always, building height, right? Because the zoning code usually has a limitation on the height based on what type of district it's in or whatever. So I guess the question that I would have is, and this may help other folks, and I know it, but I'm asking it to help other people too. With a density bonus, that's not controlled by the city of Santa Rosa, correct? That is a state level law. Is that correct? And can you explain a little bit more about why that's the density bonus component is important?
Connor, I think I'm going to defer to you.
Yeah, so thank you, Chair Weigel, again, for being here. Thanks for the question. So the density bonus is a director level approval, and part of that approval can include those concessions, as you mentioned, where the state essentially ties the hands of city planners and review authorities is especially present in this recent Assembly Bill 2097 that precludes our ability to require parking for projects that are located within 1/2 mile of a light rail station, or in this case, the SMART station. And it goes further to prohibit a review authority from denying a project based on lack of adequate parking unless specific findings are made within 30 days of the receipt of the completed application, which is a bit of an interesting situation because this project has been in, like you said, for 3 years. So there was really no possible way for city staff to issue those findings in writing pursuant to Assembly Bill 2097. So effectively, the review authority cannot deny the project strictly based on lack of adequate parking on site.
Thanks, Connor, for explaining that. And I think, the other thing that's important to note is, with when you trigger, below market housing, that triggers all these, that's how you get access to the density bonuses, right? If the applicant were to just build a market rate housing project, they would have been limited to whatever the base zoning was, and then they would have had to comply with the city's zoning standards for number of parking per the base zoning, correct?
Yes, if there's no state density bonus involved, meaning that there's no proposed on-site affordable units that grant additional density in the project, then that project is not afforded the opportunity to request concessions that can include parking reductions.
Cool, thanks. Yeah, so the reason I kind of wanted to go down that road a little bit is so that everybody can understand that yes, parking is indeed a huge concern with any project, but in many ways the city's hands are tied as it relates to the parking findings on this specific project because of everything you kind of outlined. I think it's really important to realize that, while we do have a lot of local discretionary control over certain things, there are other things that sometimes they're kind of out of our control because there's a state bill or there's a law that, overrides it and makes the requirement based on, whatever's included in that legislation. So tied to that, from a parking perspective, since parking is tricky on this particular site, I'm curious if the applicant has any plans to, a lot of times with leases, they don't, these types of projects that are encouraging, multimodal access, whether that's bicycles or ride share or bus usage or using a smart train. Does the applicant have any plans to kind of do an a la carte parking menu, as in if you rent a unit, you're not necessarily guaranteed a parking space kind of thing, right? So to encourage, I guess, carless renters, so to speak. Do we know?
Yeah, so
Applicant.
I'm just going to step in. There was some late correspondence that went out yesterday, and they talk about a parking plan and how it's unbundled parking and whatnot. So if I can just kind of, I'm trying to reel this into some of the design stuff because I really need your help on the design stuff.
Sure. Yeah, I wanted to, and there's a specific reason why I brought those two things up, and then I wanted to bring it back to the design component. So part of the reason I bring up the parking is, parking is very much part of the site design of this project, and so I'm really struggling with the project in many, many ways because we saw this project 3 years ago, and by and large, the project remains unchanged from a massing and kind of form layout. Really, the only things that changed from March of 2020 are color and the inclusion of a little bit more development on the site in terms of the arbors and some other things. And so I'm really I'm struggling because I went back and I looked at our comments and what the design review board kind of asked for, and I don't really feel like that got addressed at all in any way, shape, or form. And I understand that the applicant, they're entitled to pursue their own architectural vision for the project, and they're entitled to pick their own colors and all those things. And but I think what I'm struggling with is neighborhood context with the surrounding area, materiality. While I think, independently, the Santa Barbara aesthetic that's kind of there and that's being created in this building. It's unique and it's interesting, but it's not, again, it's not terribly contextual. From a scale perspective, you look at the kind of the civil institutions and the cultural institutions across the road. There's large swaths of green and plantings and other things in the front, or there's, until you hit the building. Whereas on the south side of Steel Lane, there's a lot of, one-story homes or one-story businesses that are, fairly close to the road, but they're not necessarily right up against the road like these very large buildings are. So, when we originally reviewed the project, we had lots of questions about setbacks and other things like that related to kind of the pedestrian scale of this building as it relates to the pedestrian scale of adjacent buildings. And so I think from a design perspective, we were concerned about how this building does not share the same pedestrian context as everything else that's kind of happening on this thoroughfare. And so because it's very dense, that's what's causing it, right? So the density of the project itself is what's causing that kind of heaviness to exist on this particular parcel. And so I'm struggling a little bit because not much was changed. We had some specific comments, we had some more nebulous comments, and kind of really, nothing again really seemed to be responded to. And I did read the applicant's responses, and they didn't feel like they really took everything into the context. Now, that being said, I think there are some things that potentially could improve the current design. If that's something that, Susie, you're interested in doing. The roof line feels really, really thin to me, given the scale of the building. And that may be just a product of the 3D program that Ingrid is using. But in Santa Barbara architecture, there tends to be a bit of a fascia on those roof lines. Even if they're not going to use Spanish tile, it looks like you're using comp shingle on this project. I would encourage Spanish tile because I think that fits within the context of the architectural vernacular that they're going for. And so if you're going to do Spanish tile, there's some depth and thickness and shadow line associated, kind of vertically up from the roof line, and then obviously the fascia boards and wood coming down. I like the wood that's introduced in some places, namely Building A East and kind of the central area in the courtyard. They've introduced some wood posts, some heavy, what I would call heavy timber, which is very, very indicative of that Santa Barbara stucco style. I'm actually a little bit hungry for more of that wood because some of the, particularly the north elevation, for instance, is quite stark with just the tile and the stucco, and it feels like it's hungry for another material. Whereas kind of the south elevation and the east elevation, they get some of that warmth from that wood kind of getting brought in. So I think, potentially introducing more of that wood would be nice. The other thing that I think is really unique specifically to Santa Barbara style architecture, and I'm not seeing it on here, but all the public spaces in Santa Barbara style architecture have like terracotta or clay tile floors, and they're really rich, and they have lots of texture, and a lot of times they have mosaics on them and things like that. And I think that could be a really nice interplay between the tile that they've placed on the outside to highlight the windows. I think that would be a way to connect to the walking surface with the vertical surfaces. If this is the style of architecture that's ultimately gonna be constructed here. Let me see here. The other thing that I'm kind of scratching my head about is it looks like there's a very nice central kind of either four-cornered arch or pointed arch or something like that. And then on the east elevation and also the north elevation, I think that goes through the center entrance into the courtyard. I mean, that's really nice, but then there's this kind of, I would call it awkward kind of arch, half arch that exists at the staircase, and they're not speaking to each other as one would think arches would be. The kind of half arch feels disconnected from the full arch in the center, and I would encourage the applicant to revisit how that works, because that kind of four-centered arch or whatever,
Is this at the entryway?
So yeah, so there's two arches. There's a central entry arch that goes underneath the kind of double height windows, and then there's on the east elevation of building A, there's at the staircase, there's this kind of like half arch thing happening, and they just don't feel connected to me. You know, the types of arches in Santa Barbara style architecture tend to be very kind of almost Gothic in a way, but in a very simplistic way. So they're either three-centered arches, four-centered arches, or three-pointed arches, or pointed arches and they're all clad in stucco, so they feel really smooth but they have kind of an elegance to them, and the component at the staircase that does not feel elegant. Feels a little slapdash to me in comparison.
Want to clarify, is it the archway going into the interior courtyard that you're talking about?
That's the one I think that fits within the context of the vernacular.
If it's helpful, I can share my screen.
I think that would be a good idea. Yeah.
Sorry for the delay on that suggestion. Is this a good slide for the entry archway, or should I find a
Connor, that's actually a great slide for both. So
great.
That entry archway where your cursor was is the one that I think fits very well within the context. And then if you go down to that item number 4, perspective from courtyard ground, you'll see that kind of half arch scenario to the left of the arbor at the bottom of the staircase. Yes, exactly. And it with it adjacent to the steps, the stepped kind of walls above, it just doesn't feel like it works from an architectural perspective. It's two dissimilar things kind of happening really close to each other, and so I would encourage the applicant to revisit that and simplify it, I guess would be the way I would call that. The same thing goes for the wood detail at the very top of that staircase. Same view, perspective view 4. That's the only kind of scenario where there's brackets and kind of some other things going on. All the other wood is kind of post and beam construction, which is very typical of the Santa Barbara style of architecture. And this it's not as I don't know. It just seems again a little bit out of place. Another thing that I think to me is partially why I'm struggling a little bit with the, you know, kind of going after a Santa Barbara style architecture is the wall thickness doesn't feel deep enough. So with a traditional kind of stucco building, you get a really nice reveal between the face of the stucco and the face of the window, you know, an inch, 2 inches, 3 inches, 4 inches. And in this application, it really only looks like they're flush with one another. And I would encourage the applicant to try to find a way to either thicken the wall or set the window back in the framing to start to create a little bit of that depth that exists in that traditional stucco assembly. And then I think that's pretty much all my design comments. I think the design review board originally had lots of concerns about the monolithic nature of the building, and that there wasn't a lot of relief to that. But in the same breath, Santa Barbara architecture tends to be monolithic. And like I was talking about with the windows, some of that window relief and some of those other things that may start to introduce less verticality and more horizontality that may make the building feel a little bit smaller, addressing the roof thickness and those sorts of things may start to ground it a little bit, I guess is what I would say. So with that, Susie, you know, again, I don't want to be terribly negative as we need housing desperately, but at the same time, you know, seeing a project that was supposed to have 3 years of evolution and it's largely unchanged is a little unfortunate, I guess is what I would call that. So does that help?
That's super helpful, and thank you. And if you don't mind, I'd love it if you could stick around because I may need some help with wording conditions. You speak architecture, I don't. So Connor, I had asked, I saw Rob Sprinkle was on the call, and I'd love to hear from Rob as well on some of the traffic.
Hi, Susie. Yeah, I'm here.
Hi, Rob. How are you?
Great, thanks. So
Thank
I know
you.
you had, oh, go ahead. I know you had some questions about traffic and what improvements would be done to address the traffic impacts. As far as the traffic study goes, as Connor mentioned, the impacts of traffic on the quantity of traffic being added to basically Steel Lane and the network is very minimal. It's 20 p.m. peak trips. That's basically 1 car per every 3 minutes. They'll be added to West Steel Lane, which is not a significant amount, which is why we didn't have them do a more in-depth traffic study. One of the concerns I did have with the project was related to parking, which is something that the community also shares. And in reviewing this project again just last night or yesterday afternoon, I came up with a potential solution to help ease some of the traffic parking in the area. And so I just like to there is area to park, but it's posted no parking on the north side of the street in front of the Snoopy Ice Arena.
You cut out just for a sec, and it was right at a critical point, I think.
I'm sorry. There is parking. A helicopter went over, so sorry.
Oh.
There is parking allowed, or there's parking space, but it's currently posted no parking in front of the Snoopy Ice Arena, all along the frontage along Hardee's to about a bus stop where it necks down. And the bus stop is actually at a location where it necks down on the north side of the street. So it's unused real estate, to be honest. And if that was to be restriped so that the parking is, or that space for parking is allowed on the south side of the street along the frontage of this project, it would accommodate 9 to 10 additional parking spaces. And I think that would go a long way to help with alleviating the concerns of the neighborhood with the parking that's currently already pretty well impacted in that area. And then with this additional housing development, it could be impacted more. It may not be because they are doing unbundled parking, but regardless, I think it would go a long way to help with the availability of additional parking in the area.
So just to clarify on that one, is that you're not, are you suggesting they park on the north side of West Steel Lane?
No, I'm suggesting that they restripe the street to allow parking on the south side. Thanks, Connor. Yep. So currently that section on the north side where there's between the curb line and the bike lane is 8 feet, which would typically be a parking area. But that is all posted no parking at this time, and no parking is allowed there. So if it was restriped similar to what it's striped to the west, so on the other side of Hardee's, you can see that it would basically be continuing that same striping alignment with parking along the south side of the road, shifting the bike lane north up against the curb as it is on the other section, and allowing parking to be along the frontage.
Very helpful. Very helpful. Okay. Are we doing any additional stoplights, stop signs, signal changes that you're aware of with this project?
Not specific to Hardee's and West Steel. That is already an all-way stop. Meadowbrook is a stop coming out onto the street as well. That we always do look at intersection operations when new developments go in. So we would be looking at the timing at Range and West Steel there to the east. We try to maximize signal timing as best we can when new developments go in, just to ensure that we're serving the standing queues if they can be served.
Got it. Yeah, I have to say, I went and I did some site visits over the weekend. I did them at odd hours, 10 o'clock at night, dinner time, and daytime, just to kind of get a feel for it. And I know at one point, I am going to say it was the daytime I went by when I got off the freeway. It was, once I was on West Steel, I was fine, but there's kind of it was confusing. It seemed like to some drivers which lane they needed to be in, but I think it's been like that since I was a little girl. So anyways, okay, well, thank you very much. And if you could stick around, I'm sorry, I'm sure you've probably got other plans, but you can stick around just to make sure that if we're writing a condition. In fact, I think that I'd like to ask the applicant Patrick, if you would be okay with the addition of a condition to restripe that section of road so that we can get some parking on the street in front of your project. That'll address, I'm sure, begin to address some concerns.
Sure, no problem. I think that's a great idea. It's all about finding resolutions that makes the project appeasable to everybody. We're not all going to agree on every single thing, but we have to throw our hat in the ring to come up with solutions, and that solution is pretty obvious when it's pointed out. So, yep, totally in favor.
Yay, thank you. I'm gonna throw out some comments, and I'm sure it may result in a little bit more discussion. But first, I want to address Chair Weigel's comments. I rewatched the design review board meeting as well, and I did hear a lot of suggestions. I also heard. Try again. Can you all hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you. I just got a message up on my screen saying that I'd been disconnected. So I heard a lot of the comments, and I noticed the same thing with the plans, that there wasn't a lot of change, but I also didn't hear emphatically from the entire board from several members of boards. I heard a lot of suggestions when I listened to that meeting. And I too was, I was kind of surprised. I was kind of surprised that there wasn't any evolution, or at least not much of it. And I also agree with several of the suggestions that Chair Weigel made. But I want to go through and I want to address some concerns. Okay, like I said, I did do multiple site visits. This was something that I understand parking is so challenging, and I did look around. I heard the public comment at last Thursday's zoning administrator meeting. I heard the public comment at the concept design review board meeting. I sympathize, but at the same time, we are evolving. The North Station area plan was adopted many moons ago, and it's recently been followed by an update to the downtown station area plan. And really, we are trying to get away from our vehicle dependency. Does that mean no vehicles? Of course not. But it doesn't mean that, one driver has two vehicles, a commute car and the truck that, he or she uses to work with over the weekend or tow their boat or anything like that. So, and for people that have that type of lifestyle, there are places to park secondary vehicles. I went back and I looked at aerial views on our GIS system, which is available to the public. I'm not sure if you can go back and look at years past like city staff can. I am a city staff member and I did go back and I looked. And over the last 20 years or so, I haven't seen the parking lots at the Children's Museum, at the Schultz Museum, or at the Snoopy skating rink, ice rink. I haven't seen those parking lots filled. There was one year, and I think it was in 2020, that the Children's Museum parking lot was very full. I had a membership. I've had several years of memberships with the Children's Museum, and I've never experienced difficulty parking. So I don't know when those aerial views were taken. We don't know if they were on a Monday, a Wednesday, or a Saturday. So, but between my personal experience and the aerial views, I'm inclined to think that shortage in parking in any of those three treasures, I will agree they are all treasures to our community, but I don't see a parking deficit over there. I know that traffic, it is kind of it's an unusual setup over there, but the traffic that I experienced just over these last 3 times, and I tried to hit, busy times, and it wasn't unbearable. And I don't, as Rob said, with the addition of one additional, one extra trip during those peak period, or every 3 minutes during those peak period hours, I think that those, I think that can be absorbed pretty easily. I do see your hand raised, Ingrid. I'm going to keep going with my comments just so I can get through them, and then we can talk about some of Chair Weigel's suggestions. Let's see. This property, in my opinion, is really ideal for a parking reduction because of its proximity to grocery and other retail, to public transportation, train and bus, and it's a great location because the bus route is much more frequent. It's also very close to a lot of places where people can work. And it's also very close to 3 treasures: the museum, the Children's Museum, and the ice rink, where many of these residents, I'm sure, would enjoy visiting. So I wanted to talk about that. And then as Connor, or Planner McKay, pointed out, our hands really are tied in terms of the parking reduction. This is a state initiative, and it is to get housing developed. I do not see a problem with the transition from commercial uses and to higher density residential uses. I think that actually makes a lot of sense. I know that there is a parking deficit when I go out on the look at, is it Meadowbrook, I guess. On Meadowbrook, during the evening and nighttime hours, I saw there was no parking left, but I would encourage other residents around there. This is a public street. I encourage people to look at their own parking requirements. I know the existing residential uses, I have not done an analysis of their parking, but perhaps revisiting their own parking programs might be something that may help. So that's where I am with the parking, with the building height, and with the reduced setbacks. Again, my opinion aside, my hands are tied because of the state requirements. Although I don't disagree with them. So that's that. Now, as far as Chair Weigel's comments, I have a few questions for the applicant in terms of his recommendations. And I know that these are going to add some cost to the project. And I have one of my own. I don't know. I'm glad that Michael's still here because I'm wondering about Juliet balconies or small balconies that at least give the feeling of private open space where they're not in a often shaded courtyard, just where they can share the open space with everybody else. So now if I think Ingrid and Patrick, you're probably going to need some speaking rights here. So go ahead and unmute yourself and we can have a conversation about it. But my first question is, would you also be willing to put the Spanish tile on the roof? I think actually it would be a really nice addition.
I have one comment about the parking, Susie, which is why I
Oh,
raised my hand when we were talking about parking.
Mhm.
We have a representative, a partner of W-Trans, who's a specialist in parking.
Mhm.
And in order to also contribute to alleviating or mitigating some of the concerns of the neighbors on record, I'd like him to be, this is Brian Canepa, I'd like him to have a chance to speak.
Okay, that would be fine. Brian,
All right. Can you hear me okay?
sure can.
Okay, fantastic. Love technology. So yeah, just to quickly kind of rehash here. I mean, we did a parking study, for this project using, very industry standard numbers from the Institute of Transportation Engineers, looking at, as I think Ingrid said earlier, empirical data, that have been collected. Probably, I think I actually looked at the manual, about 150 sites, observing parking patterns at different housing developments that are similar in scale and location to this one. And, looking at that and looking at the peak demand in relation to the number of units here, we pretty much said, look, you'll have a peak demand of about 39 spaces. But if you unbundle parking spaces, if you are really emphasizing people use transit, I mean, the number of parking spaces being proposed here, 35, should actually be enough to accommodate peak demand. I know people find that hard to believe because there is an idea that everyone comes with 2 cars, but you can actually look at multiple examples from around the Bay Area. The Green Trip, I think, is a great resource if people are interested for how housing developments oftentimes produce much less peak demand than is, I think, what traditionally is believed. So we do feel confident in the analysis, and it is backed by data. And as you said, it's supported by state law as well as by regional policy from MTC and ABAG as well. But happy to answer questions if they come up.
I appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Now, I have to ask everybody, and I'm sure everybody's anxious to get off, but I was wondering if we can all take about a 5-minute break. I have something that I have to tend to. And this seems like a good opportunity to do it now. So, Kyle,
right.
can you?
I will open us up for recess.
Thank you. And just, 5 minutes. We'll be back at 6:45. Okay, thank you, everybody. We're back. So I would like to activate a conversation with applicant team and some of the comments from Chair Weigel. Ingrid and Patrick, if you're there you are. Hi, Ingrid.
Hi.
So I'm going to start with the suggestions that came on the interior courtyard with regard to the stairwells and the wood beams at the top. Because it's on the interior and it's not really affecting the exterior, what passersby are going to see, I think it's a consider those changes, and those are changes that Connor can approve over the counter. And so, that has to do with, the archway at the bottom of the stairs and the wood feature at the top of the stairs. The creating the depth with the windows. When I looked at the drawings, one of my thoughts was it just goes straight up and there's no depth there. Is that I'm guessing there's a reason why you didn't do that?
The typical 2x6 wall assembly at exterior walls with a window installation that has fins, like vinyl windows, would mean that there would be, at the end of the day, especially since we have stucco, probably about a 3-inch inset of the window from the exterior wall. So if you look at typical stucco buildings, the windows are set in to the inside. Yeah.
Okay. So again, I'm not an architect, so I'm going to need some clarification. So it sounds like the windows will be set in.
Yeah, especially with, exactly. And also because the tile itself is another 3/4 inch thick, the tile banding, I mean, so that will increase the depth.
Okay.
Yeah. And maybe it's just, I don't know how to draw as well as some people do. So,
well, I'm sure it has something to
do. But I did want to say that I wanted to just make a comment. I have never said that the project was done in the Santa Barbara style. I'm not exactly sure where that came from.
Okay.
Yeah. It was never mentioned in the narrative or in any of my discussions.
Okay. So I'm going to say, I think the terracotta flooring that was suggested is also a really great idea, but it's a suggestion. It's not something, I mean, I would love to see that actually, I think it would look beautiful, but I'm going to leave that as a plan change that you can consider. And again, Connor could.
So if I include the floor color and a suggestion for how the exterior corridor floors and public floors could be treated in the color board, would that be sufficient?
Yeah, I think it'd be a very nice addition to make a contrast.
I agree. I just want to add that due to costs, I mean, building a 36-unit apartment building and increasing the density was essential to just create a project that might work as an economically feasible project. I mean, that the increased density just makes it almost work with careful planning from an economic standpoint. And so, especially with the addition of 4 affordable units. And I just want to say that there are many ways we can create the appearance of tecate tile, for instance, from Mexico, or that rich, deep red color, which would not be incompatible with the actual design inspiration for this building, which was not Santa Barbara style. It would not be incompatible with that. And I think we could do that with concrete and other materials as well as tiles.
So, and I understand that. And I don't think he was throwing out examples. In my opinion, it sounded like examples of what could be done to spruce it up a little bit and again, create that contrast. So, let's see. Connor, I'm hoping that you can take some notes on conditions here. And maybe the first condition being out of a contrasting color for flooring. Another item that was brought up was introducing more wood on the north elevation. And I think the north elevation, I mean, that's the one that's most visible, Ingrid.
Yes, on West Steel Lane.
Yeah, is it feasible to add some more of the wood posts out on that elevation? I think that would warm it up.
Well, we could add a opaque stain wood fascia or wood emulating composite fiber fascia, like Fiberon, some sort of treatment there that looks like that. Or alternatively, we could take your suggestion of the Juliet balconies. Those are bedroom windows. So we could change the window to French doors with Juliets on the second and third floor, and therefore give the bedrooms a sense of spaciousness and connection to the street. It is a loud street, and that's one of the reasons I didn't think the Juliet balconies would work there, but I have incorporated them into other projects, and on the interior courtyard, it might be a good idea. And I think that adding the heavier fascia in an opaque stain wood finish is entirely possible. Yes.
Okay, so
and we could do that to the underside of the eaves too, where we have the exposed rafter tails.
Right.
Hi, Patrick, go ahead.
No, that's fine. I'm in agreement with that. Ingrid's got her finger on the pulse there. So again, it's trying to make everybody comfortable, not fully comfortable, but comfortable enough to move forward.
Chair Weigel, if you wouldn't mind chiming in on the Juliet balcony, I'd love to hear your opinion on that if you're available. You may have stepped away. So
No, I'm here. I was making sure a child was not yelling at another child. So I apologize. I think we as a board, we kind of go back and forth on Juliet balconies, from time to time. I think in some instances they can be incredibly effective and to create that spaciousness and openness and connectivity to the outside world. But conversely to that, if there is an intriguing repeating pattern or element or rhythm or something like that, sometimes that sort of it feels kind of like an applique as opposed to being integrated into the design. And to the applicant team's credit, what's actually very nice is the rhythm of the windows and the stucco and the windows and the stucco on that north elevation in particular. And I think I'm also sympathetic about road noise and things like that. There's some advantages to Juliet balcony in terms of eyes on the street. You also get that with windows. I think the thing that I'm a little more hungry for is an introduction of a wood material at the second and third floor in some way that helps reinforce the rhythm, I think is what I would call it. And that could be something as simple as integrating an engaged header at the top of the window, right? That is a wood product. And Fiberon actually may work, frankly, to create that kind of sense of that horizontal component that will take away from that kind of the verticality that's being created with the rhythm, if that makes sense.
So I'm just trying to be able to draft a condition here so the fiber, is it called Fiberonics?
No, Fibron, it's
Fibron.
like kind of it's a cladding material.
Okay.
But I think what you might consider, I mean, if you're adamant about the Juliet balcony, I think that's perfectly acceptable. But I think the project is stronger without them, just my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what the applicant team should look at is instead trying to break up the verticality with a horizontal element introduced. If it, because I think that's a low, at least as I see it, that's a low dollar ad, as opposed to a Juliet balcony is potentially more, right? So you're going to save money on a window, but then you're going to quadruple that price with a door, and then, the steel work, and then the opening, and then all the flashing that goes with that, right? So I think just introducing something is a low dollar item that can help.
Okay. So the Fiberon, or that, whatever that material is, the above.
I would just call it. I would say introduce horizontal wood element at head of window bay at third floor for sure, second floor optional. If that makes sense.
Horizontal wood element at window.
Yeah, at all windows on north side. I mean, and I think Ingrid knows what I'm talking about. It's it's an engaged header that extends a couple of inches either side of the window. It's it's done all over the place in a bunch of different styles of architecture.
So, and as far as the wood though, it didn't, Ingrid, it didn't sound like you were leaning towards a different material.
No, I agree. I was just speaking out loud, but I think I could definitely draw this. It's just not drawn that way, but we could definitely add a 2x8 eave board and barge board in a wood tone, whether or not that material is actually wood or faced with something, or some other material or wood that's faced with something else. That's the question, and that's a question that just boils down to economics. And so, but I think a wood element at the third floor windows at the headers is perfectly doable, and increasing the depth of the barge boards and fascia boards is perfectly doable.
Great. Connor, I want
a wood tone.
Connor, I want to check in with you and make sure are you able to type this stuff as we're going? I hope.
I admittedly am not typing, I am writing, but
Well, that's fine.
I will put it in a format that we can add to the conditions.
Okay. And we can always go back and listen if we need to. Just so long as you have a clear understanding of it, because you're going to be the one typing those.
Yeah, and for the record, I did copy down what Chair Weigel said verbatim. So.
Okay, great. Okay, then I kind of saved I think the biggest one for last, and that's the thickness of the roof. And I know Chair Weigel suggested Spanish tile, and I know that can sometimes, I understand from my own experience that can add some additional expense and structural, because it's heavy, and as well as the cost of that. But adding thickness to the roof, I think, is a really good suggestion. So Ingrid, I'm going to ask, I was thinking that I could add a condition that says add thickness to the roof, or to the appearance of the roof, and consider, or such as Spanish tile. I don't want to be prescriptive. I don't want to tell you that it has to be wood, but it does need to be, a warm color. I don't want to tell you that it has to be Spanish tile, but I think that I look at the elevations and I see something that looks very thin, and it doesn't really go with that stucco building. As in terms of the roof,
I just want to add that the barge boards, if they're 2x8 or even thicker, and the fascia boards, that will create the sense of thickness of a heavier roof. The roofs are not going to be stick framed, they're trusses. So how they express on the exterior is that illusion that the barge board, which are the boards that are on the gable ends, and then the fascia boards, which are the boards on the where the gables come down over the eaves and overhang the eaves. Those are drawn rather thinly, I admit, here. And if we had drawn them as 2x8s or 2x10s, they, considering the span of those trusses, that would be perfectly appropriate and look much more scaled to your eye, rightly scaled to the building. We could even add the ridge, you know, and express it at the top of the gable. So
Susie,
as a beam.
I think, yeah, Susie, I have an idea.
Mhm.
I think what you and I both keyed off on is not necessarily materiality of the roof itself, but it's actually a color to the roof, if that makes sense. So at least that's my opinion. So what we're seeing on the roof looks like a pretty standard comp shingle, you know, asphalt comp shingle roof with no color, you know, perhaps a gray. And I think what might be appropriate is to condition it with, you know, asking, you know, the roof shall be in the same color palette as the stucco, right? So an earth tone, right? And then that potentially gives them the flexibility to pick up a myriad of different products. They could go with a comp shingle. They could go with a, you know, CertainTeed comp shingle that's in a red color, a brown color, a tan color, right? That there's lots of options. There's some really kind of cool synthetic Spanish tile out there that are not as heavy or as expensive as the real deal. Or, you know, hey, if they find the money and they can do the real deal, great. But I think that gives them flexibility. I think what you and I are keying off on, it feels more like an integration into the overall design aesthetic, and what's represented doesn't seem to mesh, I think is what, at least that's what my eye is doing.
Yeah, and I'm going to say, I think what Ingrid's explaining too with the thicker borders, I'm going to call it. I think that's definitely going to help, and I do think it has a lot to do with color, Ingrid. And I think if Drew used earth tone, I think warm earth tone, but I'm going to leave it up to you on the roof with the explanation that you just gave on the what was it, a 2x8 or 6x8, something by 8.
Well, minimum 8-inch thick for sure. So, and where warranted, we could try a 10-inch, see if that works.
Okay, it'll appear bulkier. I think the roof
yes, right,
bulked up. Yeah. And I'm looking at that front elevation of the courtyard, and the wood, I think it's wood. I don't know if it's wood right at the entryway there.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the type of thing that I don't know how to articulate this,
Mm-hmm.
that I would like to see on those street facing elevations more of.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I think that's what Chair Weigel was talking about. And yeah, I'm not as concerned about inside the courtyard. I am concerned on, actually, I'm going to say on both the north and the west elevations, just because they're much bolder. Okay. So I think that we've talked about the roof. I think we've gotten some resolve there. Introducing more wood or wood-like elements, I'll say, on the street-facing elevations. That you will do contrasting flooring in those areas that are visual or visible from the street. In my opinion, it would be nice to put them in the courtyard as well. Can't imagine why you wouldn't if you were already doing it, but And then your explanation with the windows, that works for me. Then I'm gonna go back.
Hey, Susie.
Yeah.
Sorry, I just want to make sure you are considering a comment that the chair made as well regarding the arch at the internal stairway and the way that that arch communicates with the entry arch. I just want to make sure that didn't get left out of your delivery.
I think from what I can tell, you don't really, that's not super visible from the outside. I think that if I were the applicant team, I would certainly consider those. And if they want to make that change, Connor, that's something that they can do with you over the counter. Or, as part of their building permit submittal. But it's not something that I'm going to require. I'm more concerned really about what we're seeing from the exterior. People who move in will see what they see. I do have some other conditions that I would like to add, though. I do have them typed out and can email them. The additional conditions that I'd like the applicant to agree with are that the operator will enforce the parking management plan prepared by Ingrid Anderson in her email dated January 24th, 2023. Patrick, does that sound okay to you?
It was actually with Patrick's
Yeah, I'm
help.
fine.
Oh, yeah. It was with
And
Patrick's
then-
help that I devised that list, so.
Ingrid, I'm going to ask Patrick a few questions here because this is
Sure,
operational stuff. Okay,
Yeah.
thanks.
okay.
And Patrick, is there going to be an on-site manager a live-in manager there?
Yeah,
Great.
there has to be by law anyway. Over
Okay.
12, over 12 units.
Oh, is it over 12? I thought it was higher. Okay.
It's always
you-
like if we have a building on McBride Lane and we have an on-site manager, and that just keeps everything in order. You know what I mean? There's rules and regulations, and everybody builds a community around a like-minded manager they can go to, and they just put out loads of little fires. And it's always the best representation for the owner to have an on-site manager. They get a reduction in rent, and the whole facility just works really nice. Absolutely.
Okay, great. And I'm gonna kind of derail us just for a second, and I'm gonna say, Rob Sprinkle, I think we've already got the accepted condition, and I don't think I'm gonna need anything else from you. So thank you for attending and have a great night.
Great,
Thanks, Rob.
Prior to, I'm concerned, I went back, like I said, and I listened to the design review board, the concept meeting. And I know that Andy Bordessa got on and talked about those redwood trees to the east, but I am very concerned that an arborist has not weighed in on that. So I'm going to ask that prior to any ground disturbing activities or the issuance of grading or building permits, that the applicant shall prepare or provide an arborist's evaluation for the trees on all adjacent properties, the trees that will be impacted by the project. The report shall include at a minimum the species, the height, the diameter at breast height, health of the tree, and appropriate protective measures. Once approved by city staff, those protective measures shall be printed on all plan sets submitted for grading or building permits.
Okay.
Does that work? Okay, great.
Yep, that's fine.
We have some pretty standard bird and bat protective measures that go out on all of our tree permits. I don't have that language right in front of me, but I would like to add it, and it includes things like doing a bird survey or a nesting survey. I think it's 3 days prior to ground disturbing activities if the project breaks ground between February 1st and August 31st. Does that work for you? We do this on most projects.
Yeah, that's fine. The birds have a say too.
Yeah. and bats. Well, we really need
Oh,
there's
there's bats?
We need
Oh,
them
bats as well?
desperately.
Wow.
Yeah, well, there's some protocols that requires,
Okay.
if you don't have somebody do a biologist come out, there's some protocols for moving limbs and stuff, but Connor can provide all that.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Don't have,
yeah.
we don't have that problem in San Francisco.
Well, you might have that problem in San Francisco. They just don't know it.
Right.
On the existing, the draft resolution, tree protective measures 10 through 16 shall be printed verbatim on all plan sets submitted for grading or building permits.
Okay.
I would like a sign added at both the north and the west elevations, so the street facing elevations, that provides the general contractor's name, contact information, and a phone number, and any issues or
That's me.
complaints are addressed within 24 hours, regardless of holiday, weekends, anything. If a complaint comes up, doesn't mean you resolve it, but it at least somebody gets acknowledged.
Yep, totally fine.
The purpose of that is to not involve the city unless the city needs to be involved. So,
Of course.
I didn't see a condition, I may have overlooked it, to enter into an affordable housing contract with the housing authority or with the city for a period of 55 years. Is there,
Yep.
Connor, that's
I've heard
required, right?
That's a requirement.
Yeah, okay.
For the state, just get the state bonus. That is a requirement.
Okay. One of the things I want to say, my comment about the floor plans that were selected as the affordable units, is that I was surprised to see that there weren't any 2 bedrooms. We don't need to address that here. I'm gonna defer to the housing folks because I think they probably know a lot more about that than I do. But I would consider that, just because it goes from 1 to 3 bedroom, and it doesn't really lend itself to just, I don't know, a smaller family maybe. But it's a food for thought for you. No conditions, just a comment on that one. And then clarify. And that one I was already taken care of. So, and that if those conditions of approval work for you, if you're, I'm prepared to say yes to both.
Yes to the dress.
Yes, yeah. How do you like that?
Yep, I'm saying yes to the conditions, and you're saying yes to the approval under the conditions for the project to move forward. Correct?
Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying. So based on those conditions, and I want to take a minute and I want to ask Connor if that all makes sense, if I was clear.
Yes, thanks, Zoning Administrator Murray, you're crystal clear.
Thank you very much. Okay, so I'm going to start now. I think I've got 2 resolutions. I'm going to pull them up and I'm going to read them just like we do in our board meetings. Where's our resolution? The first resolution. I'm sorry, it sounded like somebody was going to say something. Maybe not. Okay. The first resolution here is a resolution of the zoning administrator of the city of Santa Rosa adopting an addendum to the certified North Santa Rosa Station Area Specific Plan Environmental Impact Report, State Clearinghouse number 20111022034 for the West Steel Lane Apartments project located at 1650 West Steel Lane, Santa Rosa, assessor's parcel number 041042012, file number PRJ 21-010, and waive further reading of the text. That is the first one. And then the second one is resolution of the zoning administrator of the city of Santa Rosa approving a minor conditional use permit to allow a supplemental density bonus and a minor design review for the construction of a 36-unit multifamily residential development for the property located at 1650 West Steel Lane, Santa Rosa, assessor's parcel number 041-042-012, file number PRJ 21-010, as and adding the additional conditions and waive further reading of the text. I will, once I see the revised resolution, I will be signing that resolution, both of them. So I want to say thank you again for anybody who's still on the call, for attending, for those of you that came on January 19th last week and came again today. We appreciate that very much. Your input is valuable, and I hope you can see the benefits of this project. Thank you very much, everybody, and have a nice evening.
All right, thank you. See you, Susan.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.
I think I need to officially adjourn the meeting at 7:17. Have a good night, everybody.